The emergency alarms echoed through the crystal halls of the Galactic Council station. High Counselor Zephyron of the Etherean Empire floated 3 feet above his seat, his translucent blue form flickering with anxiety. Around the massive circular chamber, representatives from 11 other species sat in their designated areas, each looking more worried than the last. "The third fleet is gone," announced General Vextar, his insectoid mandibles clicking rapidly. The Zephyrite warrior's energy-based body crackled with frustrated electricity. Complete destruction. Not a single ship escaped. Counselor Mordak, a massive rock-like being from the granite worlds, slammed his stone fist on the table. The impact sent vibrations through the entire station. "That makes 4 full battle groups lost in 2 months. The Vorthak swarm is unstoppable." Silence filled the chamber. For over 3,000 years, the Galactic Council had maintained peace across their territories. 12 advanced civilizations working together, sharing technology and wisdom. War was almost unknown among them. When conflicts arose, they were settled through careful negotiation and limited engagements with strict rules. But the Vorthak swarm followed no rules. They had appeared from the dark space beyond the outer rim 18 months ago, ships that looked like massive insects crossed with machines. They consumed everything in their path. Planets, asteroids, even stars were somehow drained of energy to feed their endless hunger. The Council's first response had been diplomatic. They sent ambassadors with gifts and offers of trade. The Vorthak had eaten the ambassadors and converted their ships into more war machines. Then came the military response. The Council's combined fleets were the most advanced in the galaxy. Their weapons could tear apart molecules. Their shields could deflect anything. Their commanders were trained in the ancient arts of honorable warfare. None of it mattered against the swarm. "Our weapons are useless," said Dr. Kellara, the lead scientist from the Nexari Collective. Her multi-armed form gestured at the holographic display showing their latest defeat. "They adapt too quickly. Every tactic we use they counter within hours." High Counselor Zephron's form solidified as he settled back into his chair. His people, the Etherians, were telepathic masters who had guided the Council for millennia. They could read minds across star systems and coordinate fleet movements with thought alone. But even they were helpless against an enemy that seemed to think as one massive organism. "We need new ideas," Zephyron said quietly. "New approaches. We are fighting an enemy unlike anything we have ever faced." "What about the Crimson Legion?" suggested Ambassador Telwalk from the Merchant Worlds. "They have the largest fleet." "Already committed," replied General Vextar, "and already destroyed. The Legion's pride meant nothing to the swarm." "The Deep Space Miners Union," offered another voice. "Their ships are built for mining, not fighting." "The Scientific Consortium?" "They build research vessels, not warships. One by one, they went through every member civilization. Each had contributed their best ships and crews. Each had failed against the relentless advance of the Vorthak swarm. Then Counselor Mordak spoke up again. "What about the humans?" The chamber fell silent. Several representatives looked confused. "Humans?" asked Dr. Kellara. "Who are they?" Mordak pulled up a holographic file. "New species. Made contact about 50 years ago. Single-planet civilization from a world they call Earth. They applied for council membership but were placed on the waiting list." Zephyron studied the data. Humans were indeed new to galactic civilization. Their technology was primitive compared to council standards. No faster-than-light travel of their own. No energy weapons. No telepathic abilities. They had only recently developed basic spaceflight. "What could such a primitive species possibly offer?" asked General Vexitar dismissively. Mordak scrolled through more files. "According to our cultural observers, they have an unusual history. Their entire planet seems to have been in a state of constant warfare for most of their existence." "Barbarians," muttered someone from the back of the chamber. "Perhaps," said Mordak, but effective ones. Their military history is extensive. The holographic display changed to show Earth's history, wars spanning continents, conflicts lasting decades, weapons that grew more deadly with each generation. The assembled representatives watched in fascination and horror as human military technology evolved from simple clubs to weapons that could destroy entire cities. "They fight each other constantly," observed Dr. Kellara. "How terrible." "Yes," agreed Mordak. "But notice how they fight. No rules of engagement, no codes of honor. They use whatever tactics give them advantage, regardless of tradition." Zephron felt a chill in his ethereal form. The council species had fought wars, yes, but always with rules, always with honor. There were things you simply did not do in battle, limits that civilized beings respected. Humans, it seemed, had no such limits. "Their technological level is far below our standards," pointed out General Vextar. "What good are primitive weapons against the swarm?" "Perhaps that is exactly what we need," said a new voice. Everyone turned to look at Ambassador Yithak from the hive minds of Kepler. The insectoid creature rarely spoke in council sessions, preferring to communicate through pheromone releases that only other hive species could understand. "Explain," requested Zephran. Yithak's compound eyes glittered. "We have failed because we think like civilized beings. We follow patterns. We use advanced technology in predictable ways. The swarm adapts because our responses are logical and expected." The ambassador gestured at the human military data still floating in the hologram. "These humans, they are unpredictable, chaotic. They use whatever works, not what is proper. Perhaps chaos is what we need against the swarm." Counselor Mordak nodded slowly. "The humans have something we lack: experience with total war. Every one of their major conflicts was a struggle for survival, where anything was acceptable if it meant victory." "You are suggesting we invite barbarians to fight our battles?" General Vextar's energy form flared with indignation. "I am suggesting we invite survivors," replied Mordak, "because that is what they are. A species that has survived thousands of years of constant warfare. If anyone knows how to fight an enemy that cannot be reasoned with, it would be them." Zephyron considered this carefully. The Etherians prided themselves on wisdom and careful thought. They had guided the council through 3 millennia of peace and prosperity. But peace and prosperity had not prepared them for the Vorthak swarm. "What do we know about their current military capabilities?" he asked. Dr. Kellara manipulated the hologram to show recent observations of Earth. "Limited space forces. Maybe 200 ships total, most designed for system defense. Their weapons are chemical-based projectiles and primitive explosives. No energy shields. No quantum manipulation technology." "Pitiful," snorted General Vextar. "And yet," continued Dr. Kellara, "they have been rapidly advancing their technology since making contact with us. Our observers report they are creative in adapting new concepts." The display showed human shipyards working at incredible speed. Humans seemed to build things faster than any other species, though the quality was often rough compared to council standards. "They compensate for technological limitations through numbers and innovation," noted Mordak. "Look at their industrial capacity. They can produce ships and weapons at a rate that rivals our most automated factories." "Crude ships," pointed out General Vextar. "Ships that work," countered Mordak. "Sometimes crude and functional is better than elegant and destroyed." Zephron made his decision. "Dr. Kellara, what is the current status of human space technology?" "Basic, but improving. Rapidly. They have developed their own FTL drives based on information we shared during first contact. Their ships are unconventional in design. They seem to prioritize armor and redundant systems over speed or elegance." "Like their minds," observed Ambassador Yithak. "They assume things will go wrong and plan accordingly." Very well, said Zephron, his form brightening with decision. We will extend an invitation to the humans. As provisional members of the Council, they will be asked to contribute to the war effort against the Vorthak swarm. You cannot be serious, protested General Vextar. They are barely capable of spaceflight. What could they possibly contribute? We will not know until we ask, replied Zephron firmly. And given our current rate of failure, we cannot afford to ignore any possible advantage. The High Counselor activated the Chamber's communication system. Send a priority message to the human homeworld. Request immediate diplomatic contact with their military leadership. Inform them that the Galactic Council formally invites them to participate in our defense against the Vorthak swarm. Dr. Kellara looked puzzled. Should we not provide them with advanced weapons first? Their current technology is inadequate for space combat against the swarm. Zephron considered this. No, let us see what they can do with what they have. If Ambassador Yithak is correct about the value of unpredictability, then giving them our standard weapons might make them too much like us. The message was sent through quantum communication channels. The reply came back within 6 hours, faster than any species had ever responded to a council invitation. The humans accept, announced the communications officer. They are dispatching a military representative immediately. Admiral Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. She will arrive with a small fleet for evaluation of the situation. How small? Asked General Vextar. 20 ships. Several council members laughed. 20 ships against a swarm that had destroyed fleets of thousands. But Zephron did not laugh. Something about the human response troubled him. Not their eagerness to help, but the speed of their reply. Most council species would have spent weeks in careful deliberation before committing to such a dangerous mission. Humans had agreed immediately. Either they were foolishly brave, or they understood something about warfare that the council had forgotten. In 3 days, they would find out which. The chamber began to empty as representatives returned to their sectors to prepare for the human arrival. Only Zephron remained, staring at the tactical displays showing the swarm's continued advance. 12 council fleets destroyed, hundreds of thousands of lives lost, 3 star systems consumed, and their best hope now rested with a species that had only just learned to travel between stars. Zephron tried to read the future with his telepathic abilities, but saw only darkness and the distant sound of something. That might have been thunder, or the sound of marching feet. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace exactly on schedule. High Counselor Zephron watched through the station's sensors as 20 ships materialized in formation near the council station. They looked nothing like any vessels he had ever seen. Where council ships were sleek and elegant, human ships were blocky and functional. Thick armor plating covered every surface. Weapon ports dotted their hulls like the eyes of some metal insect. They moved with purpose rather than grace, turning in tight formations that spoke of endless practice. Ugly, commented General Vexatar, his energy form crackling with disdain. They look like flying fortresses. That may be the point, observed Counselor Mordak. The lead ship was easily twice the size of a standard council cruiser. Its hull was scarred with what looked like battle damage, though the humans had supposedly seen no major space combat. Strange markings covered its sides, numbers and symbols that made no sense to council eyes. "Incoming transmission," announced the communications officer. "Put it through," ordered Zephron. The main display activated, showing the bridge of the human flagship. Zephron had seen images of humans before, but seeing one in person was different. Admiral Chen stood in the center of her bridge, a compact woman with short dark hair and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. The bridge itself was as functional as the ship's exterior, banks of screens and control panels everywhere. Humans sitting at stations, their hands moving constantly over controls. Everything was metal and plastic and blinking lights. No elegant crystal interfaces or telepathic command systems. "High Counselor Zephron," Admiral Chen said, her voice clear and direct. "Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. Thank you for the invitation to join your war effort." Zephron noticed she did not say help with the war effort. She said join, as if she already considered humans equal partners rather than junior assistants. "Admiral Chen, welcome to Council Space. We are grateful for your willingness to assist us in this crisis." "Before we begin," Chen continued, "I need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. My ships have been monitoring Council communications for the past 72 hours. The tactical situation appears worse than your initial message indicated." Dr. Kellara leaned forward. "We have prepared complete briefings on Vorthak technology and tactics. Our most experienced commanders will share their knowledge of proper engagement protocols." Admiral Chen's expression did not change, but something flickered in her eyes. "With respect, Doctor, your proper engagement protocols have resulted in the loss of 12 fleets. I'd like to review the actual combat data instead." An uncomfortable silence fell over the council chamber. No one had ever questioned their military procedures so directly. General Vexitar's form flared. "Our tactics are based on 3,000 years of successful military theory. We do not simply throw ships at enemies like barbarians." "No," agreed Chen calmly. "You follow rules. The Vorthak don't. That's why you're losing." The bluntness of her statement sent shockwaves through the chamber. Several council members began speaking at once, but Zephron raised a hand for silence. "Admiral, perhaps you could explain your assessment of the situation." Chen gestured to someone off-screen. The main display split to show tactical data from human sensors. Their sensor technology was primitive compared to council standards, but the analysis was detailed and thorough. "The Vorthak swarm operates as a single organism," Chen began. "Your fleets engage them as if they were separate ships that happen to be working together. That's incorrect. Every Vorthak vessel is connected to every other vessel. They share information instantly. When you destroy one ship, the entire swarm learns from that ship's destruction." She manipulated the display to show the progression of council battles. "Notice the pattern. In each engagement, the swarm adapts faster as the battle continues. By the end of every fight, they're countering your tactics almost before you use them." Dr. Kellara studied the data. "We had observed this pattern, but assumed it was simply efficient communication. It's more than communication. It's evolution in real time. Every weapon you fire teaches them how to defend against it. Every tactic you use shows them how to counter it. You're not fighting separate enemies. You're fighting one enemy that gets smarter every time you hurt it." General Vexitar's energy form dimmed slightly. "If this is true, then conventional tactics are indeed useless. How do you propose to fight an enemy that adapts to everything?" Admiral Chen smiled for the first time since arriving. It was not a pleasant smile. "You don't fight the enemy they become. You fight the enemy they are. Right now. This second. Before they can adapt." She gestured again, and the display showed human fleet formations. They looked chaotic compared to the precise arrangements council forces used. "Human military doctrine is based on 3 principles," Chen continued. "First, the enemy gets a vote. No plan survives contact with the enemy, so we plan for our plans to fail. Second, adaptation beats optimization. A good plan that can change is better than a perfect plan that can't. Third, victory is the only acceptable outcome. Everything else is negotiable." Counselor Mordak leaned forward with interest. "Everything else?" "Rules of engagement, codes of honor, acceptable losses, traditional tactics. If it doesn't contribute to victory, it's a luxury we can't afford." The chamber fell silent again. What Admiral Chen was describing went against everything the council stood for. They were civilized beings who fought with honor and restraint. Ambassador Yithak clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. You are saying we should abandon our principles? I'm saying your principles are getting you killed, Chen replied. The Vorthak don't care about your honor. They don't respect your rules. They're trying to consume your entire civilization, and you're worried about fighting fair. High Counselor Zephron felt a chill in his ethereal form. What would you have us do differently? Admiral Chen's image was replaced by a tactical display of the current front lines. Human analysis showed Vorthak positions, supply routes, and fleet concentrations. First, we need to understand their real capabilities, not their ship specifications or weapon systems, their limitations. Every organism has limits, even the swarm. The display highlighted several Vorthak concentrations. They consume resources to grow and adapt. That means they need to maintain supply lines. They coordinate through some kind of communication network. That network can be disrupted. They prioritize certain targets over others. That means they have strategic objectives, not just random expansion. Dr. Kellara studied the analysis with growing excitement. You're suggesting we target their infrastructure rather than their fleets? I'm suggesting we target everything. Their fleets, their infrastructure, their communication networks, their resource-gathering operations, their manufacturing capabilities, everything that keeps them functioning. That would require massive fleet deployments, protested General Vextar. We don't have the ships. You don't need massive fleets. You need the right kind of attacks in the right places at the right times. Chen's smile returned. You've been fighting the swarm like they're an enemy fleet. They're not. They're an enemy civilization. And civilizations have weak points. The display changed to show human ship designs in detail. Council representatives leaned forward to examine the crude but functional vessels. Our ships are built for a different kind of warfare, Chen explained. Heavy armor to survive damage. Redundant systems to keep fighting when things go wrong. Multiple weapon types to stay effective when the enemy adapts to one system. Fast deployment capability to strike before the enemy can prepare. And if the enemy adapts to your tactics? Asked Dr. Kellara. Then we change tactics, immediately, without hesitation, without worrying about tradition or proper procedure. Chen gestured to her crew. Every human officer is trained to think independently. If the plan stops working, they're authorized to create a new plan, on the spot, without asking permission. General Vextar's form flickered with confusion. That sounds like chaos. Controlled chaos. The kind of chaos that keeps enemies guessing. Chen looked directly at the general. How long do your fleet, commanders spend planning an engagement? Standard procedure requires a minimum of 6 hours for tactical analysis and coordination. The swarm adapts in minutes. By the time your commanders finish planning, the enemy they're planning to fight no longer exists. The weight of this revelation settled over the chamber like a heavy blanket. Everything they had believed about proper military procedure was not just wrong. It was actively helping their enemies. High Counselor Zephron made a decision that would change the course of the war. Admiral Chen, we place our remaining fleets under your tactical command. What do you need from us? Chen looked surprised by the sudden authority. Complete operational freedom, no interference from Council military doctrine, no requirements to follow traditional engagement rules, and I need intelligence data on every Vorthak position, movement, and activity for the past 6 months. Done, said Zephron immediately. There's something else, Chen continued. My fleet didn't come here to provide backup for your operations. We came here to win. That means taking risks your people might not be comfortable with. What kind of risks? Asked Counselor Mordak. Admiral Chen's expression grew serious. The kind of risks that civilized beings don't usually take. The Vorthak are trying to destroy everything you've built. If we're going to stop them, we might have to become something you're not sure you want as allies. Zephron considered this carefully. The humans were offering victory, but at a price. They would have to trust these strange, violent beings to fight a war in ways the Council found disturbing. but the alternative was extinction. Admiral Chen, you have our complete authorization. Fight this war however you see fit. Chen nodded grimly. Then we start immediately. I want strike teams ready to deploy in 6 hours. We're going to hit them hard, fast, and in ways they won't expect. As the transmission ended, the council chamber remained silent. They had just handed their fate to a species they barely understood. General Vextar voiced what everyone was thinking. What have we done? High Counselor Zephyron stared at the tactical displays showing the advancing swarm. What we had to do. The question now is whether we can live with the consequences. Outside the station, human ships began moving into attack formations. Their movements were sharp and aggressive, like predators preparing to hunt. The war was about to change completely. Admiral Chen stood in the war room aboard the UES Indomitable, studying the holographic displays that showed the current tactical situation. Around her, human officers worked alongside council representatives who were still adjusting to human methods. Target confirmed, reported Lieutenant Commander Torres from the intelligence station. Vorthak mining operation in the Kepler 442 system. 12 harvester ships stripping the asteroid belt. Dr. Kellera looked up from her analysis console. Admiral, those harvester ships are not military targets. They pose no direct threat to our fleets. Chen turned to face the Nexari scientist. Doctor, those harvesters are feeding raw materials to Vorthak manufacturing centers. Every ton of metal they collect becomes part of a new warship. In human military doctrine, that makes them legitimate targets. But the rules of engagement clearly state that non-combatant vessels should not be targeted unless they pose an immediate threat, protested General Vextar, his energy form flickering with agitation. General, there are no non-combatants in this war, Chen replied firmly. The Vorthak don't distinguish between military and civilian targets. Every one of their ships is part of their war machine. Every resource they gather strengthens their ability to destroy us. Commander Sarah Kim, Chen's tactical officer, highlighted several positions on the display. Admiral, we have 3 strike groups in position. Human ships with council escorts, as requested. Chen nodded. The past 2 weeks had been spent reorganizing the combined forces into smaller, more flexible units. Instead of massive fleets moving in formation, she had created dozens of independent strike groups that could operate without central coordination. The council representatives were still uncomfortable with this approach. This dispersal of forces violates every principle of concentrated firepower, observed Counselor Mordak. How can we achieve decisive victories with such small units? We're not trying to achieve decisive victories, Chen explained. We're trying to achieve constant pressure. The swarm adapts to whatever pattern of attack we use. So we're not going to use a pattern. She gestured to the tactical display, which showed human strike groups scattered across a dozen star systems. Every group operates independently. Different targets, different timing, different tactics. By the time the swarm adapts to one attack, 5 more are hitting different objectives. High Counselor Zephyron materialized his form more solidly as he considered this. You are sacrificing the possibility of crushing victories in favor of guaranteed smaller successes. Exactly. Small successes add up. Crushing defeats don't. Chen manipulated the display to show Vorthak resource flows. Look at their logistics network. They're not just expanding randomly. They're building a supply chain to support their advance. We're going to break that chain. Lieutenant Commander Torres announced incoming intelligence. Admiral, reconnaissance drones have identified the Vorthak command structure in the Rigel sector. Massive bioship, roughly the size of a small moon. Heavy escort fleet. That's their sector coordinator, explained Dr. Kellera excitedly. If we could destroy it, the entire Rigel sector would lose coordination. General Vextar's form brightened. A decisive strike. We could commit our entire remaining fleet to a coordinated assault. No, said Chen immediately. The room fell silent. Every council representative stared at her in confusion. Admiral, said Zephyron carefully, This represents exactly the kind of strategic target our forces are designed to engage. Why would we not attempt to destroy it? Chen called up detailed sensor data on the Vorthak command ship. Because it's a trap. She highlighted the escort formations surrounding the bioship. Look at the positioning. Perfect defensive formation, optimal sensor coverage, overlapping fields of fire. This isn't a command ship conducting routine operations. This is bait. Commander Kim nodded in agreement. The swarm has studied our previous battles. They know Council forces prefer large, coordinated attacks against high-value targets. So they've given us exactly what we want to attack. You're suggesting they want us to find their command ship? Asked Dr. Kellara. I'm suggesting they've learned from every engagement we've had with them, Chen replied. They know how Council fleets operate. They've prepared the perfect counter to our most likely response. General Vextar's energy form crackled with frustration. Then what do you propose? We cannot simply ignore such a valuable target. Chen smiled grimly. We're not going to ignore it. We're going to attack it in a way they don't expect. She called up a different set of tactical displays. Strike Group. 7 has been shadowing this command ship for 6 days. The Vorthak know they're there. It's impossible to hide a fleet completely, but they think Strike Group 7 is conducting reconnaissance for a larger assault. Are they not? Asked Counselor Mordak. No. Strike Group 7 is going to attack alone. Right now. While the swarm is still waiting for our main fleet to arrive. The room erupted in protests. Council representatives spoke over each other, explaining why this was impossible, suicidal, contrary to all military logic. Chen waited for them to finish. Commander Kim, order Strike Group 7 to commence attack. Target the escort ships first, then the command vessel. Admiral, said Zephyron urgently. Strike Group 7 consists of only 8 ships. The escort fleet has 43 vessels. This is not a tactical engagement. It's a suicide mission. Strike Group 7 is not trying to destroy the entire escort fleet, Chen explained as she watched the tactical display update with real-time battle information. They're trying to create chaos and confusion while achieving their primary objective, the DIAT. Display showed the human attack beginning. Instead of the standard Council approach of forming battle lines and engaging in organized fleet combat, the human ships scattered immediately after dropping out of hyperspace. What are they doing? Asked General Vextar. They have broken formation completely. They were never in formation to begin with, replied Commander Kim. Each ship has an independent mission. The Vorthak are expecting a coordinated fleet assault. Instead, they're getting 8 separate attacks happening simultaneously. The Council representatives watched in fascination and horror as the human tactics unfolded. One ship launched torpedo salvos at the Vorthak escorts while accelerating at maximum speed toward the edge of the system. Another ship used ramming attacks against enemy vessels, relying on its heavy armor to survive collisions that would destroy lighter Council ships. They're using their ships as weapons, observed Dr. Kellara with shock. When necessary, agreed Chen. Ship captains are authorized to use whatever tactics give them the best chance of completing their mission. A third human ship had somehow penetrated the escort screen and was conducting close-range attacks against the command vessel itself. Its weapons were primitive compared to Council standards, but it was firing them at point-blank range where even simple projectiles could penetrate advanced defenses. This is madness, protested General Vextar. They're going to lose every ship. They're going to complete their mission, Chen corrected. Look at the tactical situation. The Vorthak escort fleet was indeed destroying the human attackers, but their perfect defensive formation had collapsed. Ships were moving out of position to engage individual human vessels. The overlapping fields of fire had gaps. The command. Ships' escorts were being drawn away from their protective positions. And then the real attack began. What's happening? Asked Zephyron as new contacts appeared on the display. Phase 2, said Chen. While the Vorthak were focused on strike, Group 7, Strike Groups 3 and 11 moved into position. They've been waiting for the escorts to break formation. 20 more human ships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Vorthak defensive perimeter. But instead of engaging the escort fleet, they launched everything they had at the now exposed command ship. "Torpedoes spread away," reported the communications officer, relaying messages from the strike groups. "Multiple hits on the target. Bioship is taking critical damage." The massive Vorthak command vessel, caught without its full escort screen, tried to retreat toward its remaining defenders. But human ships were already moving to intercept, their captains making split-second decisions without waiting for orders from Fleet Command. "The bioship is breaking apart," announced Dr. Kellara with amazement. "The entire Vorthak formation is collapsing." Chen watched the tactical display with satisfaction. "Strike groups, begin immediate withdrawal. Do not pursue fleeing enemies. Return to rally points Alpha through Delta." "Admiral," said Zephron quietly, "how many ships did we lose?" 14 out of 28 engaged, Chen replied without emotion. "Acceptable losses for a successful mission." The council representatives stared at her in shock, half their attack force destroyed, and she called it acceptable. "Admiral," said General Vexitar carefully, "in council military tradition, losses of 50% constitute a catastrophic defeat. In human military tradition, mission success is the only metric that matters," Chen replied. "We destroyed a critical enemy asset and disrupted their entire sector coordination. The tactical advantage gained is worth far more than the ships we lost." Commander Kim updated the strategic display. "Admiral, we're receiving reports from other strike groups. Mining operation in Kepler 442 has been destroyed. Supply convoy in the Wolf system has been eliminated. Manufacturing complex in Proxima Centauri is under attack." Chen nodded with satisfaction. "The pattern is working. Simultaneous attacks across multiple systems. The swarm can't adapt to all of them at once." Dr. Kellara studied the incoming reports. "Admiral, these attacks are achieving something we never expected. The Vorthak are actually retreating from some positions." "Of course they are," said Chen. "They're losing resources faster than they can replace them. For the first time since this war started, we're making expansion cost more than it's worth." High Counselor Zephron felt a mixture of hope and unease. The human tactics were undeniably effective, but they required a mindset that troubled him deeply. "Admiral, your crews fight with remarkable determination. But do they understand that many of these missions are essentially suicide attacks?" Chen's expression hardened. "Counselor, every human who volunteered for this mission understands exactly what we're asking of them. They understand that this war isn't about them personally. It's about survival of everything they care about." She gestured to the strategic display showing the Vorthak advance. "The swarm has consumed 3 star systems and billions of lives. If we lose this war, they'll consume billions more. Every human in this fleet volunteered knowing they might die. Because someone has to be willing to pay that price, or everyone dies." The room fell silent as the implications settled over the council representatives. They were witnessing something they had never seen before, a species that was willing to sacrifice individual lives for the survival of civilization itself. "There's something else," Chen continued. "The Vorthak aren't just adapting to our military tactics. They're starting to learn that war with humans costs more than they expected, and that's a lesson we need to keep teaching them." Commander Kim announced another incoming report. "Admiral, Vorthak forces in the Rigel sector are pulling back toward their main concentration areas. They're abandoning outer positions." Chen smiled for the first time in days. "They're learning to be afraid. Good. Fear makes enemies make mistakes." As the reports continued to arrive, showing successful attacks across a dozen star systems, the council representatives began to understand what they were really witnessing. This wasn't just a change in military tactics. This was a change in the nature of the war itself. For the first time, the Vorthak swarm was facing an enemy that fought without restraint, without mercy, and without fear. And for the first time, the swarm was losing. The human industrial complex had been working for 6 weeks straight. Admiral Chen stood in the observation deck of the massive shipyard that humans had constructed in the Vega system, watching as dozens of new vessels rolled off the production lines. They were not beautiful ships. Council representatives had stopped trying to hide their distaste for human engineering. Where their own vessels were elegant works of art, human ships looked like they had been built in a hurry by people who cared more about function than form, which was exactly the case. "Production report, Admiral," announced Chief Engineer Patricia Walsh, her uniform stained with grease and metal shavings. "We've completed another 47 vessels this week, 32 assault corvettes, 12 heavy destroyers, and 3 carrier platforms." Dr. Kellera looked up from her analysis station in amazement. "Admiral, this production rate is impossible. No civilization can construct warships this quickly." "Council civilizations can't," agreed Chen. "We're not building them to Council standards." She gestured toward the shipyard, where human workers swarmed over partially completed hulls. "These ships are designed to last 6 months in combat conditions. After that, they'll need complete overhauls or replacement. But 6 months is longer than we expect this war to last." General Vextar's energy form flickered with confusion. "You are deliberately building inferior ships?" "We're building ships, optimized for our tactical requirements," Commander Kim corrected. "Heavy armor for survivability, redundant systems for reliability, rapid deployment capability for tactical flexibility, simple controls for easy training." Chief Walsh pulled up technical specifications on the display. "Each ship uses standardized components that can be manufactured anywhere in human space. No exotic materials, no advanced manufacturing techniques, nothing that requires specialized facilities." "But why?" asked Counselor Mordak. "Surely better ships would be more effective." Admiral Chen called up production statistics that made the Council representatives stare in disbelief. "We can build 12 of these ships in the time it takes to build 1 Council vessel. Which is more effective, 1 perfect ship or 12? Good enough ships?" The mathematics were undeniable. Human industrial capacity was overwhelming the Vorthak ability to destroy human ships. For every vessel the swarm eliminated, 3 more appeared to take its place. "There's another advantage," continued Chen. "The Vorthak adapt to our technology, but they can't adapt faster than we can change it." She highlighted several ship designs on the display. Mark I assault corvettes used kinetic projectile weapons. The swarm developed armor to counter them, so we switched to Mark II corvettes with shaped charge warheads. When they adapted to those, we built Mark III corvettes with plasma cannons purchased from Council suppliers. Dr. Kellera studied the progression with growing understanding. "You're treating ship design like an evolutionary process. Each generation adapts to counter the enemy's previous adaptation." "Exactly. And we can evolve faster than they can." Chen gestured to the shipyard where workers were already modifying the latest designs. "By the time the swarm figures out how to counter Mark III corvettes, we'll be deploying Mark IV corvettes with completely different weapon systems." Commander Kim updated the tactical display with current frontline positions. "Admiral, the new strategy is showing results. Vorthak advance has stopped in 7 sectors. They're actually pulling back from forward positions in 3 sectors. They're learning that rapid expansion is no longer profitable," observed Chen with satisfaction. "Every system they try to consume costs them more ships than they can afford to lose." High Counselor Zephyron materialized his form more solidly as he studied the tactical situation. "Admiral, these results are encouraging, but I'm concerned about the cost. Human casualties are substantial." The casualty reports were indeed sobering. Human forces were losing ships and crews at a rate that would have forced any Council species to seek immediate peace negotiations. But the humans kept fighting. "Counselor, we knew this would be expensive," Chen replied quietly. "But we're not just fighting for military victory. We're fighting to make the Vorthak understand that attacking our space comes with an unacceptable price." She called up intelligence reports showing Vorthak internal communications that human cryptographers had managed to decode. The swarm is starting to debate the wisdom of continued expansion. For the first time in their recorded history, they're encountering an enemy that costs more to defeat than the victory is worth. Chief Walsh interrupted with an urgent report. Admiral, we have a problem. Vorthak forces are massing for a major assault on the Centauri system. Intelligence estimates over 300 bioships, plus escorts. The room fell silent. 300 Vorthak vessels represented the largest concentration of enemy forces seen since the war began. They're trying to achieve a decisive victory, analyzed General Vextar, destroy our industrial base in one overwhelming assault. Chen studied the intelligence data carefully. No, they're not trying to win the war. They're trying to make us afraid to continue fighting. Dr. Kalara looked puzzled. I don't understand the distinction. The swarm has learned that we can match their production capacity, but they think we're like other council species, that will surrender if they inflict enough casualties in a single engagement. Chen's expression grew grim. They're about to learn how wrong they are. Commander Kim brought up defensive preparations around the Centauri system. Admiral, we have 47 ships in the system currently, nowhere near enough to stop a force of that size. We're not going to stop them, Chen announced. We're going to let them take the system. Then we're going to teach them why that was a mistake. The council representatives erupted in protests. The Centauri system contained major shipyards and manufacturing facilities. Losing it would be a catastrophic blow to human industrial capacity. Chen waited for the objections to subside. The shipyards in Centauri are already being evacuated. Equipment is being moved to backup facilities in the Ross and Wolf systems. By the time the Vorthak arrive, they'll be capturing empty buildings. But the strategic value of the system itself, began Counselor Mordak, is a trap, Chen interrupted. The Vorthak want to occupy Centauri because they think it will cripple our production capacity. We're going to let them occupy it. And then we're going to show them what it really costs to hold territory against an enemy that doesn't accept defeat. Commander Kim updated the display with new tactical information. Admiral, strike groups Alpha through Sierra are moving into position around the Centauri system. Per your orders, they're staying outside the immediate combat zone. Chen nodded. When the Vorthak take the system, they'll establish defensive positions and start converting our facilities to their own use. That's when we hit them. With what? Asked General Vextar. 47 ships cannot defeat 300 enemy vessels. 47 ships can't defeat 300 enemy vessels in open space, Chen agreed. But 300 enemy vessels trying to hold fixed positions can be destroyed by an enemy willing to use unconventional tactics. She called up technical specifications for a new type of human vessel that made the council representatives stare in horror. Automated attack drones, explained Chief Walsh. No crew, minimal life support, maximum armor and weapons. They're designed for one-way missions. Dr. Kellara studied the specifications with growing alarm. These are essentially guided missiles the size of frigates. Exactly. We can build them faster than we can train crews to operate them, and they can execute attack patterns that no sane pilot would attempt. The display showed hundreds of the drone ships being prepared for deployment. Each one carried enough firepower to cripple a Vorthak bioship, and they were designed to reach their targets regardless of defensive fire. This is not warfare, protested General Vextar. This is automated slaughter. This is what happens when you threaten the survival of human civilization, Chen replied coldly. The Vorthak want to play for keeps. We're going to show them what that really means. High Counselor Zephron felt a chill in his ethereal form. Admiral, what you're describing sounds like total war. Chen turned to face him directly. Counselor, that's exactly what this is. Total war. Complete commitment of our entire civilization to the destruction of the enemy. No restraints, no mercy, no acceptable losses that are too high if they achieve victory. Commander Kim announced incoming reports from the front lines. Admiral, Vorthak assault on Centauri has begun. Initial resistance is collapsing as planned. Enemy forces are advancing toward primary objectives. Excellent, said Chen. Signal all strike groups to begin Phase 2 operations. Full deployment of autonomous attack units. Target priority is containment, not destruction. Containment? Asked Dr. Kellara. We're not trying to destroy the Vorthak fleet immediately, Chen explained. We're trying to trap them in the system, make it impossible for them to retreat. Then we're going to destroy them piece by piece until none of them survive. The tactical display updated to show swarms of human attack drones converging on the Centauri system from multiple directions. The Vorthak, focused on their assault against the remaining human defenders, were caught completely off guard by the sudden appearance of hundreds of new attackers. The drones are using kamikaze tactics, observed General Vextar with a mixture of fascination and revulsion. They're ramming enemy ships rather than trying to survive combat. Each drone is programmed with target priorities and basic tactical algorithms, explained Chief Walsh. They don't need to survive. They just need to inflict damage before being destroyed. Commander Kim updated the tactical display with real-time battle data. Admiral, the containment is working. Vorthak forces are trapped in the system. They're taking heavy casualties but can't retreat. Chen watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. Signal all strike groups to commence Phase 3, full assault, no survivors. What followed was unlike anything the Council had ever witnessed. Human forces attacked the trapped Vorthak fleet with a combination of manned ships, automated drones, and weapons systems that seemed designed specifically to maximize enemy casualties regardless of cost. The humans used their own ships as weapons when necessary. They deployed mines that could think for themselves. They launched missiles that could pursue targets across entire star systems. They used tactics that no civilized species would consider acceptable. And it worked. Vorthak fleet is collapsing, reported Commander Kim 6 hours later. Estimated enemy losses, 87% of engaged forces. Our losses, 63 ships and approximately 1,500 drones. Dr. Kellara stared at the tactical display in amazement. Admiral, you destroyed the largest Vorthak fleet concentration in the war, and you did it by sacrificing a single star system. No, Chen corrected. We destroyed the largest Vorthak fleet concentration by making them think they could take our territory and hold it. The Centauri system was just the bait. High Counselor Zephron studied the aftermath of the battle with a mixture of awe and deep unease. The humans had achieved an overwhelming victory, but at a cost that made him question what kind of allies they were becoming. Admiral, he said quietly, your people fight with a determination that borders on terrifying. Admiral Chen looked at him with eyes that had seen too much combat. Counselor, we fight to win. If that terrifies our enemies, good. If it disturbs our allies... She shrugged. That's a price we're willing to pay. The war had changed completely. The Vorthak were no longer expanding. They were struggling to survive against an enemy that treated warfare as a simple matter of mathematics. Apply enough force in the right places, and any enemy could be destroyed. The question now was whether the galaxy would be safe with humans as its protectors. The Vorthak retreat had become a rout. Admiral Chen stood in the command center aboard the UES Indomitable, watching as the last organized swarm formations fled toward the dark space beyond the galaxy's edge. After 8 months of brutal warfare, the impossible had happened. The swarm was broken. Final casualty reports, Admiral, announced Commander Kim, her voice carrying exhaustion that matched everyone else in the room. Vorthak losses, estimated 94% of their total fleet. Strength, confirmed destruction of their primary hive ships, manufacturing centers, and resource extraction operations. Dr. Kellara looked up from her analysis station, her multi-armed form trembling with fatigue and amazement. Admiral, the swarm is attempting to establish communication. They're requesting terms for surrender. The command center fell, silent. For the first time in recorded galactic history, the Vorthak swarm was asking to surrender. High Counselor Zephyron materialized his form more solidly than usual, his ethereal body glowing with a mixture of relief and deep concern. Admiral, this is unprecedented. The swarm has never shown any inclination toward negotiation. They've never faced an enemy that made war too expensive to continue, Chen replied grimly. Put them through. The main display activated, showing a Vorthak bioship that looked nothing like the pristine vessels they had encountered at the beginning of the war. This ship was scarred, damaged, and barely functional. The alien intelligence that spoke through its communication systems sounded equally broken. Human forces, the voice was mechanical, translated through systems that struggled to convert Vorthak concepts into human language. We acknowledge defeat. We request cessation of hostilities. General Vextar's energy form flickered with surprise. They're actually surrendering. After all this destruction, they're willing to admit defeat. Chen studied the image of the damaged bioship carefully. What are your terms? We will withdraw beyond the galactic rim. We will not return to this region of space. We ask only for survival of our remaining population, Commander Kim whispered urgently to Chen. Admiral, our intelligence estimates indicate they still have enough ships to cause significant damage if they choose to fight to the end. Chen nodded slightly, then addressed the Vorthak directly. Your withdrawal is acceptable, but there will be conditions. State your conditions. First, complete evacuation of all occupied systems within 30 standard days. Second, transfer of all captured technology and resources to Council forces. Third, establishment of monitoring stations to verify your compliance with withdrawal terms. The Vorthak bioship was silent for long moments. When it finally responded, the mechanical voice carried something that might have been resignation. Conditions are acceptable. We will comply. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. The war that had threatened to destroy galactic civilization was over. But the aftermath would prove more challenging than the conflict itself. Admiral, said High Counselor Zephyron carefully, the Council will need to discuss the implications of this victory. Your methods have been effective, but they raise questions about the future. Chen turned to face the assembled Council representatives. What kind of questions? Dr. Kel'Ara gestured to the tactical displays showing the scale of destruction across the former war zone. Admiral, human forces have fundamentally changed the nature of warfare in our galaxy. The weapons you've developed, the tactics you've employed, they represent a capability that concerns many Council members. You're worried about what happens now that the war is over, Chen said bluntly. Yes, admitted Counselor Mordak. Your people have demonstrated an ability to wage war more effectively than any species in galactic history. That makes you valuable allies, but also potentially dangerous ones. General Vextar's energy form pulsed with nervous energy. Admiral, during this conflict, human forces have deployed weapon systems that could destroy entire star systems. You've used tactics that prioritize victory over every other consideration. The question facing the Council is whether such capabilities can coexist with galactic peace. Chen was quiet for a long moment, studying the faces of the beings who had asked for humanity's help and were now afraid of what they had unleashed. Counselor Zephyron, she said finally, what exactly is the Council asking? The High Counselor's form solidified completely, a sign of deep seriousness among his people. Admiral, the Council is prepared to offer humanity full membership, with all the rights and privileges that entails. However, there would need to be certain understandings about the use of your military capabilities, such as restrictions on weapons development, agreements about when and how human forces could be deployed, oversight of your military industries. Zephyron paused. assurances that humanity's approach to warfare would be moderated by Council wisdom. Commander Kim stepped forward angrily. You want to disarm us after we saved your civilization? We want to ensure that the galaxy remains safe, replied Dr. Kellara. Your methods were necessary against the swarm, but they represent a level of military capability that could threaten galactic stability. Admiral Chen held up a hand to silence her officers. I see. So the Council wants humanity to be strong enough to protect the galaxy, but not strong enough to threaten the Council. That's a crude way of putting it, said General Vextar, but essentially accurate. Chen walked to the viewport and stared out at the stars for several minutes. When she turned back, her expression was thoughtful but firm. High Counselor, let me explain something about human nature. We didn't develop our military capabilities because we're naturally violent. We developed them because we're naturally protective. She gestured to the displays showing human casualties from the war. 37,000 human military personnel died in this conflict. Each one of them volunteered knowing they might not survive. They didn't fight because they enjoyed killing. They fought because they couldn't stand the thought of the swarm destroying innocent lives. Dr. Kellara looked puzzled. I don't understand the distinction. The distinction is motivation, Chen explained. We don't fight to conquer or dominate. We fight to protect. But when something threatens what we care about, we fight without limits until the threat is eliminated. High Counselor Zephron considered this carefully. You're saying that human military capability is defensive in nature? I'm saying that human military capability is protective in nature, Chen corrected. We will use whatever force is necessary to defend our friends, our principles, and our way of life. But we have no interest in conquering other species or imposing our will on others. Commander Kim added, unless you threaten us or our allies, then we become your worst nightmare. The Council representatives exchanged uncertain glances. Chen's explanation was reassuring in some ways, but troubling in others. Admiral, said Counselor Mordak slowly, how can the Council be certain that humanity will always consider us friends rather than threats? Chen smiled for the first time in weeks. Counselor, you asked us to help save your civilization. We lost 37,000 people doing exactly that. If you think we're going to turn around and attack the people we just died protecting, you don't understand humans at all. She gestured to her officers and crew. Every person in this fleet has friends and family back on Earth. They want to go home to peaceful lives. They don't want to conquer the galaxy. They want to know that the galaxy is safe so they can live their lives without worrying about the next existential threat. High Counselor Zephron felt the truth of her words through his telepathic abilities. Chen was not lying or concealing hostile intentions. She genuinely wanted peace. But she was also absolutely committed to being prepared for war. Admiral, he said carefully, what would you propose as terms for human membership in the Council? Chen considered this. Full membership with equal voice in Council decisions. No restrictions on human military development or deployment, but agreement to consult with the Council before taking major military actions. And recognition of humanity as the Council's primary military force. That would make humans the de facto military leaders of the entire galaxy, observed General Vextar. Yes, Chen agreed, because we're the ones willing to do what's necessary to keep it safe. Dr. Kellara looked troubled. Admiral, doesn't that create the risk of military thinking dominating Council policy? Doctor, does the risk of attack dominate your personal policy? Chen asked. Do you spend all your time thinking about how to hurt other people? Of course not. Neither do we. We spend most of our time thinking about science, art, exploration, trade, diplomacy, all the same things you do. But when someone threatens those peaceful activities, we're prepared to defend them. Commander Kim added, the difference is that we're good at it. High Counselor Zephron made his decision. Admiral Chen, the Council accepts your proposal. Humanity will be granted full membership with recognition as our primary military force. In return, we ask only that you remember the principles you've stated today. Which principles? Asked Chen. That you fight to protect, not to conquer. That you use your capabilities to defend civilization, not to impose your will upon it. Admiral Chen extended her hand in the human gesture of agreement. High Counselor, as long as the Council remembers that protecting civilization sometimes requires doing things that civilized people find disturbing, Zephron reached out with his ethereal form and briefly made contact with Chen's hand. The gesture looked strange, but both species understood its significance. "Admiral," he said quietly, "the galaxy is fortunate to have guardians like humanity. I hope we never give you reason to doubt our friendship." Chen's expression grew serious. "Counselor, friendship is earned through shared trials. We've just been through the worst trial in galactic history together. If that doesn't make us permanent allies, nothing will." As the ceremony concluded and the Council representatives departed, Commander Kim approached Chen privately. "Admiral, do you really trust them?" Chen looked out at the stars where Vorthak ships were still fleeing toward the galactic rim. "Commander, I trust them to be exactly what they are. Civilized beings who want to live in peace. That's why they need us. And if they change their minds about wanting us as allies," Admiral Chen's expression grew cold, "then they'll learn the same lesson the Vorthak just learned, that threatening humanity's friends is a very expensive mistake. The war was over. The galaxy was safe. And everyone understood that it would stay that way as long as humans were watching the darkness between the stars. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as the guardians that civilized species needed when civilization itself was threatened. It was a responsibility they would carry for generations to come.